Hello, everybody. Hope all is well. So I wanted this week talk about Parsha Pinchas. A lot of amazing ideas that we can learn from, Pinchas, the whole story of Pinchas. So let's get started. So we know with Parsha Pinchas that before the Parsha, Parsha Pinchas is actually like a continuation of Balak, the previous week's Parsha. So what happened at the end of Parsha Balak? It said basically that Bilam, he was trying to curse the Jews. He kept trying to do it, and God kept stopping him, and God told him, you can't curse the Jews. These people are blessed. There's no reason to curse them, if they didn't do anything wrong. So Bilam kept trying to go back and forth, trying to curse them, trying to find a way to do it, and it didn't work. So Bilam went to plan B. Plan B was that he knew the God of the Jewish people hates immodesty. And he basically devised a plan with another nation called Midian. So you have the nation of Moab and the nation of Midian. And they devised a plan basically to get the Jews to sin, to do an immoral, immodest crime. What was the crime? Basically that they got a bunch of, they made a marketplace with a bunch of, goods, and they're selling items. And when the Jewish people, the Jewish nation were passing by, they stopped by these marketplaces, and basically these marketplaces had goods and items on the outside, and the people standing in front of the marketplaces would basically say, oh, you want the good stuff, come to the back, right? And you want even the more good stuff, come to all the way to the back. Like they do in stores. They don't keep the good stuff in the front, they keep it in the back. And long story short, the plan of Bilam was to basically trap the Jews into sinning with non-Jewish women. Basically, when they went to the back, it ended up being very, very pretty girls, and the Jews, they basically, a lot of the Jewish men, ended up sinning with these non-Jewish girls, and they said, you want to be with me before you be with me, bow down to my avodah zarah, my idol worship. So Jews ended up doing, immoral crimes with women, plus they started doing idol worship, and because of that, God started, a plague happened, and God started killing thousands of Jews. And it was basically a mess. It says that there were 24,000 people who were dying, basically. And now, one of the tribes, there's 12 tribes, one of the tribes that was committing the sin was the tribe of Shimon. And one of their leaders, which this week's Parsha tells us his name is Zimri, he basically took one of these Midianite, princesses. They hated the Jews so much, they wanted to get them to sin, that they even sent their own daughters. They sent the princesses, to come attack them, to cause the Jews to sin. Sent them in the front lines. And basically, this guy Zimri got his Midianite girl, non-Jewish girl, and in front of the entire, Jewish people, especially in front of Moses and the 70 elders, the Sanhedrin, the Jewish court, the Jewish Supreme Court. He basically was like in front of Moses flexing, hey, I'm about to go with this girl, and I'm about to do stuff with her, and it says, the Torah says what? That everybody was crying. Everybody. Moses was crying, the elders were crying, everybody was like literally like shocked. Imagine someone took in front of the biggest rabbi, in front of the chief rabbi of Israel or something, or the chief rabbi of America, it doesn't matter, and brings a non-Jewish girl, and in their face says like, yeah, or eats like, a piece of, meat and dairy, or eats pork in front of them, hi, or like, in your face, something like that. And long story short, everyone was, like no one knew what to do. Everyone was stuck. And it's funny, the oral Torah tells us that behind the scenes, what really happened, one of the things that happened is that this guy, Zimri, he basically told Moses, your wife is a Midianite girl, so I'm going with a Midianite girl. What's the difference? Obviously, the difference was that Moses, his wife, did a real Jewish conversion. She was there. She converted. She accepted upon herself to keep all the mitzvah. And this, non-Jewish girl that this guy's with never converted, never did anything. So she's totally not Jewish and whatever. So obviously there was a lot of tension going on. And long story short, came in a guy named Pinchas. And Pinchas saw what was going on. He saw the Jewish people were in distress. He saw thousands of people were dying. And he told himself, if I don't go right now, and stop this, no one's going to do it. And what ended up happening, he took a spear in his hand, the Torah says, and he went in the tent, and he basically killed these two people who were sinning, Zimri and the non-Jewish Midianite Cosby, together while in the act. And that's where last week's Parsha ends. And the beginning of this week's Parsha basically says that Hashem said to Moses, Pinchas, son of Elazar, son of Aaron the Kohen, turn back my wrath upon the children of Israel when he zealously avenged my vengeance among them, so I did not consume the children of Israel in my vengeance. Therefore, behold, I give him a covenant of peace, and it shall be for him and his offspring after him a covenant of eternal priesthood, because he took vengeance for his God and he atoned for the children of Israel. Basically, Pinchas stepped up, he took action, and because of that, God gave him a huge reward. He named this week's Parsha after him. He named the whole Parsha. It's a big deal to have a Parsha named after you. And not only that, before this, the Torah tells us that Pinchas wasn't a Kohen, and even though he was a descendant of Aaron, he wasn't really he wasn't picked to be a Kohen. And because of this whole incident, God said, okay, because of that, this whole act, I make you and all your descendants forever and ever to be Kohanim, which is a really big deal. It's a really big upgrade. So we see from here that the Jews basically sinned. Pinchas came and saved the day, and he got rewarded for it. Fine. Now the question I have on this is that why didn't Moshe, Moshe is the chief rabbi. Moshe was, he was an amazing person, and why didn't, what happened before this, actually the oral Torah tells us, I forgot to mention, that basically before he was about to go kill the Midianite girl and the Jew and Zimri, the Jewish man, the head of the tribe, Pinchas asked Moshe, isn't there a halacha that basically if a Jewish man and a non-Jewish girl are sinning in public, like about to do the act, that someone who's zealous could go in and basically kill them, right? So there's this halacha basically, and obviously you have to be on a certain level to do this. So this is not anybody if you go on the street and you see somebody doing this, you totally have no right to do it. This is a different situation, different case. I'm not going to go into all the details, but the idea was Pinchas, he kept this halacha, and he basically asked Moses about the halacha, confirming it, and he ended up doing it. So my question is, if Moshe this halacha, to kill a person, who's going with a non-Jew in public. Again, that doesn't apply to us. Don't take it out of hand. I'm only talking about, again, someone on Pinchas's level. Again, a lot of details to explain, so don't take this out of hand. Obviously, this is kind of dangerous to say that because people will take it out of hand and they don't understand what really went down. But the idea is that Pinchas, he went in and did this. But the question is, why didn't Moshe do this? What was the problem? Why didn't Moshe go in and do this act and end the plague and save the day basically? So that's the question. Why wasn't it Moses? Why did Pinchas do it? So the answer is, based off what I said before, because to do this act of zealousness, you really, really had to be l'shem shamayim. You really had to, do it for the sake of, if someone, for example, want to kill, Zimri and Cosby, the girl's name was, right? Kill them because, he was upset at them for whatever reason, since it wasn't a true act of zealousness. A true act of zealousness means you're doing it only for the sake of God, and you're not doing it because of any other motivation. Because if someone has another motivating factor, for example, he's angry at the people owe him money or whatever, and because of that he's angry and wants to go kill them, he's not allowed to do this halacha. This halacha doesn't apply to him. That's why it's very complicated halacha. So why didn't Moses do it? The answer is based off what I said before. Moshe, basically, because Zimri came in and started challenging Moshe and started, basically telling him, your wife, you're this, that, whatever, Moshe couldn't do this because he basically, if obviously, Moshe is the man of God, but because of this whole interaction that Zimri started putting Moshe down and started challenging Moshe, that took Moshe from being able to do this mitzvah, because maybe he couldn't do it, maybe he wasn't able to do it 100% for the sake of zealousness because of this whole interaction of, Zimri putting him down because of Moshe's wife, of how she's a Midianite and how she converted. So that's why Pinchas was the only person to do this. Pinchas, everybody else was obviously, they were scared, they were crying, whatever. But Pinchas, what went through Pinchas's head? What's the lesson? Why was he the person? Because Pinchas knew the Mishnah. He knew, obviously, the Mishnah's oral Torah. He knew that we say it in Perkei Avot, chapter 2, verse 6. We say, B'makom she'en anashim, hishtadel liot ish. In a place where there's no men to do the job, hishtadel, make yourself into that person. What does that mean? In a place where there's no men, strive to be a man. Meaning Pinchas realized that if I don't do this, if I don't stop this plague, thousands of Jews are dying right now. If I don't do anything about it, no one can. Not even the chief rabbi, Moshe, the chief rabbi of the Jewish people, not even he could do anything. He's limited in a certain sense because of that whole incident. I'm the only one who could stop this. I'm the only one who could stop this plague. I'm the only one who could save all these Jews from, God forbid, dying. And we said 24,000 people died. Every second, another person was dying. Pinchas stepped up. He knew this Mishnah. He internalized this idea. In the place where there's no man to do the job, you got to make yourself the man. And that's what happened. And that's the answer. Why was Pinchas the one who did it? Because he was the only person who could do the job. He was the only person who, he saw the situation. He saw no one could do anything. And he said, I'm the only one who could take care of this situation. I'm the only one who could do the job. And the Midrash, the oral Torah, explains so many miracles and miracles that happened because, Pinchas, of this whole situation of how he got saved, how they didn't try to kill him after, and while he was doing it, a lot of different miracles that happened of how Hashem helped him in this. So what's the lesson? The lesson is very clear. When there's no person to do the job, you got to do the job. There's so many situations in life where sometimes there's no one else to do it. There's no one else. You might be the one with the skill and talent. You might be the one who has the connections. You might be the one who knows exactly what to do, and there's no one else to do it. And a lot of the times we doubt ourselves. We say, I'm not down, I'm incapable, I'm unable. Or sometimes we tell ourselves, I'm just not down, I don't have energy to do this, I don't want to do the job. But you know what the Torah says? When there's no people, when there's no men to do the job, you got to be the man. You got to do it. If you don't do it, no one else is going to do it. And I want to say a very, very crazy story that I feel like I had that moment in my life where this applied to me. The story goes as follows. My mother knew a person. She was a landlord for one of these people. She helped. Her job was management. She would collect rent from a person. And basically, long story short, my mom calls me up one day and tells me, listen, one of the people who were, one of the tenants, he was a Jewish man, and he passed away, and he has absolutely no family. He doesn't have anybody. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have wives. He doesn't have nobody. I don't even think he has any Jewish friends. And the story was that he basically, they said that, let's say it was on May 30th, they said that he passed away on May 30th, and for 1 week, no one was there for him. He passed away. He was in his apartment. And it gets to a point when no one's taking care of a dead body, that starts stinking up the room. And eventually, people started smelling the bad smell. They ended up calling the police. They broke down the door and they find this guy. This however old he was, in his late 60s. This Jewish guy was dead. And my mom told me, listen, this basically because he has no family, has nobody to take care of him. The city is going to collect his body, and obviously the city is not planning to spend thousands of dollars to give him a proper Jewish burial, bury him in the ground, do all that stuff. So they're planning to cremate him. And my mom tells me, listen, we need help. Can you do something about it? I don't know anybody. You're the only person who could help me with this. And so, long story short, I told my mom, okay, fine. Like we said, there was no one else to do the job. And if there's no one else, I'm the only one who could bury this guy. I'm the only one who could help my mom. This guy has no other family. I know how to do all this stuff. I know people. I have connections. So I told my mom, even though I'm so busy, I have so many things on my doing. This is the last thing, another thing to have on my plate that's already full. But I told my mom, that's it. There's no one to do it. I got it. I'll do it. Don't worry about it. So long story short, his body was taken by the city, and we had to get his body. We're not really his family, so we have to get his body. So long story short, I called an organization called Chevra Kadisha. That's the Jewish Burial Association. I talked to the guy. I said, listen, we have this guy. We have to get his body. So me and this guy started. I told him the whole situation, and we we started trying to figure out how to get the body. We went. He said, okay. Basically, he told me we have to go to court. We ended up going to court. It took like a month and a half process. We sent the rabbi, the Chabadnik. He went to court, and after a couple times, basically, he ended up getting his body in court, and now I told the guy told me, like, listen, it's gonna cost like over $7,000 to bury this guy. And I said, listen, don't worry about the money. Whenever the time, let's first get this guy's body. Let's go to court. Let's do what we never need to do. And then when time comes to get the money, we'll get the money. It doesn't matter. And he got the body, it took a month just to get his body. And again, in Judaism, we say that every second a person is not buried, it's very, very painful for the soul. The soul is what will have like a very, very like hard time, because the soul is not settled, and it's very harmful to that person, basically. And we're basically, they call me up. They say, listen, we got his body, and we got to bury him tomorrow. I'm like, okay, we got to bury him tomorrow. They're like, oh, but we need to get the money to pay the people for the burial plot, and it was gonna, to get that much kind of money, it takes a couple of days. I'm like, don't worry about the money. We'll get the money. Just make the funeral tomorrow. We'll figure everything out. And not only that, we need to get 10 people. So what ended up happening in literally, let's say 7-8 hours, right? We ended up collecting from the community, the community I'm in, over $7,000. People, we made a post, we sent it on WhatsApp. We said the guy needs to be, get the Jewish. He doesn't have anybody, and he needs help. And we basically, long story short, we ended up, getting the money for it in a couple hours, which is pretty crazy. And now we needed 10 people, and it's very hard to get 10 people in the middle of a day, 2:00 in the afternoon, to go, go funeral. The place was like, maybe an hour and a half drive with traffic. And, luckily we got 10 amazing people in the community, 10 men came and said, we'll do it. They're busy. Literally every single person was busy, and they said, we'll come, we'll do it. We say that this idea that a person has no one to bury him, it's an idea called met mitzvah. Met mitzvah is the idea when there's a Jewish person and he has nobody to bury him, that it's one of the biggest mitzvahs. It's actually we call it chesed shel emet. It's the most, truth-worthy mitzvahs. It's the most, altruistic mitzvah. Why? Because you're helping a guy who basically you're not going to get everything from. Anytime you try helping somebody, like you give somebody money, you give somebody a loan, you help another person, you always can get something back, or if not him, his children. But this guy had nobody. It's the ultimate mitzvah, because when you help this guy, you're not getting anything in return from him. He can never give you anything. He doesn't have any family, doesn't have any kids, right? So we call it a met mitzvah, and we say it's such an important mitzvah, this mitzvah, met mitzvah, that if you have a Kohen Gadol, the head, Kohen of the Bet HaMikdash, that if he has, let's say a Kohen is not allowed to get himself impure with dead bodies. But we say that if a Kohen is in the street and he finds a dead body and there's no one else to bury him and he's the only person who could do it, we say that even though it's a big sin for him to get impure by dead bodies, he's allowed to impurify himself, the most holiest person probably in the entire world, the Kohen Gadol. He's the one who goes into the Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies, in the Jewish Bet HaMikdash, the temple, and he goes there and no one could go there but him. And if someone else goes there and they don't have the right intention, they could die. Like he's that holy of a person to be able to go in there. And even that person, who's the holiest person in the world, basically it can defile himself with a dead body, because that's how big this mitzvah is. So this whole situation, what I forgot to mention, is a met mitzvah. So these people, they came and they did it, and now it's the day of, it's 1 hour before to bury this guy, and I'm like, how do we even bury a person? Like, it's very complicated. We have to, there's a lot of prayers you have to say and things you have to do. Like, I don't know the whole ritual. And I asked my rabbi, what do we do? And the rabbi told me, listen, call this rabbi right now. This rabbi, who he lived like an hour away from where we are. He said, call this rabbi. This rabbi is an expert. It's too complicated to explain for you to do it. Call this rabbi. And again, imagine we're 1 hour before the funeral. I call this rabbi, and this rabbi lives like an hour away. And I tell him, can you help us with the funeral? And luckily we got lucky. Obviously it's from Hashem. He wasn't busy, and he ended up coming. And he told me, okay, come pick me up. I'm like, listen, you're too far to pick you up. I'll order you an Uber. And the Uber was exactly, if I called him 10 minutes or 20 minutes later, he would have never been able to come because it would have took way longer. The Uber took an hour to get there. And he came exact time. It was enough time for him by the time I called him to make it there. And we ended up going there. We did the funeral. And another really crazy thing. This guy, so he's a Jewish man, but a lot of people, you have to figure out whether or not they're actually Jewish because we don't know his family, we don't know who his parents are, we never met them. So I called one of the big, something called the posek, a big rabbi who deals with crazy cases and tells you, okay, based off the Torah, this is the situation, this is what you're allowed to do. And I tell that big rabbi, and again, I know I thought about this all last minute, but it would just, it came to my mind and I'm like, okay, it's important, you have to figure it out. And long story short, I called this rabbi and I say, Rabbi, this guy, we don't know, maybe he's not Jewish, how do we know his mom is Jewish? How do we know this? How do we know that? And I started telling him this guy's story of how this guy basically, his parents were from Germany and he ended up moving, Jews from Germany, and they ended up moving to America. And to Israel. They ended up moving to Israel, and this guy basically grew up. He was a physicist. He went to the University of Tel Aviv, and I told him, but I don't think this guy, he moved to America eventually, but I don't think, my mom said he wasn't religious at all. He had absolutely no connection. I don't know if he kept Yom Kippur, kept Shabbat. He looked like he didn't keep anything. But the one thing he did say, he said that his parents were Jewish, and he had a mezuzah, So the rabbi said, based off of all that information you gave, if he only had one thing or the other, then we would doubt it, and then you would have to go and return all that $7,000 because maybe the guy is not Jewish, and you're telling people to pay, donate money for a Jewish burial, And long story short, the rabbi said because of these two factors, it's 100% a mitzvah to bury this guy. He's 100%. You could rely on the fact of something called a chazaka, I don't know how to say it in English, but the idea that there's enough strength in the claim to that he's Jewish, and because of that, you could bury him. So, point I'm trying to say is, long story short, we ended up burying the guy, and we ended up we actually there's a mitzvah to actually bury a person and do the whole thing. We did the whole funeral process, and that's it. End of the story. He was buried, and the mission was solved. Now, to connect it back with Pinchas, how does this connect back? When my mom told me, Aaron, I want you to do this. I need your help. Can you help me with this? Can you do this? I could have made the excuse, Mom, I'm busy. Oh, and I forgot to say that this guy was 2 days away from being cremated. 2 days, meaning we got him just in time that he wasn't gonna be cremated. Basically a day or two before. So, going back to connect this, my mom told me, Aaron, I needed to do this. And again, imagine I was going through so many things. I was so busy. I had so many things on my plate at that time when my mom asked me. But I thought this Mishnah in Perkei Avot in my head. I thought this whole idea of Pinchas, that in a place where there's no men, strive to be a man. When there's no one to do the job, you got to be there to do the job. And because of that, such a big mitzvah took place, and it took hours. I had to call, go back and forth. It took a kind of like a day just to do all this stuff. But you know what? In a place where there's no one to do it, you got to do the job. That's what Hashem did. Hashem put you in that situation. He gave you that test. He gave you the skills. He gave you the talents. He made you know the right people. Whatever it is, you got to take up the job. And what's the takeaway? The takeaway for all of us is what? That each and every one of us, we're going to be put in situations in our life where there's going to be things happening, and we're the only ones who could stop it. We're the only ones who can make it come true. We're the only ones who could do the job. When there's no one else to do the job, you got to do it. So if that happens in a case of Kiru, for example, there's a not religious Jew around you, and this guy has zero connection to Judaism. You meet him in the airport, he's sitting next to you on the plane, and basically, you're probably one of the only religious Jews this guy's ever going to meet in his life. You could be, you could sit on the plane with him and not say anything to him. Just do your thing, learn your own Torah, read your own books, put your headphones in, go into your own world. Or you could tell yourself, listen, this guy, he's bageling me. He's trying to tell me he's Jewish. He's putting his thing, and it looks like he has no connection to Judaism. If I don't talk to this guy, maybe this guy will never talk to another Jew again. And I know what's up. I know the truth. I know about Judaism. If I don't talk to this guy, no one will ever talk to this guy. And this guy, after 120 years, is going to be like, bro, you saw me on a plane. You had 6 hours to schmooze with me, talk to me about Judaism, ask me, prove to me there's a purpose of life, prove to me God exists, prove to me the Torah is from God. Or you know what, even better, just give me a book or give me a website, do something. You didn't do anything. You didn't talk to me. You didn't try helping me. Why? You're the only person in that situation. You could have done that. Or there's another mitzvah, for example, like the case I gave, where to bury this dead guy. Or someone, when it came in this story, I needed 10 people to get the minyan. Everyone telling me I was busy, and these 10 guys said, you know what? It's a mitzvah. There's no one else to do it. We'll do it. Let me know. I'm in. There's going to be so many scenarios in our lives where Hashem, it's going to give us different cases, different scenarios. And if you don't do the job, no one else will do the job. You got to step into it, whether it's you see a guy, whether it's something big in history, maybe you have a big idea. Maybe it's an idea, for example, Rav Noach Weinberg, he started Aish Torah, he had that in his dream. He wanted to create a yeshiva, a Jewish learning institute, to teach Jews. To teach not religious Jews about Judaism. There was no such thing as of this idea back then. He was the first yeshiva to, this learning institute to do that, to implement the idea of teaching Torah to not religious Jews. And everyone was telling him, what are you doing, this, that? But what did he tell him? What did he say to himself? He said, in a place there's no one to do it, I got to do the job. There's no one else who's going to do it, but I have the passion, I have the desire, I'm going to do it. And because of that, look how much influence Aish had on the entire world. Look how many people became closer to God, closer to Judaism because of Aish Torah. Right? Or whether it's Sarah Schreiner, who started the Beis Yaakov movement. Because of that, Jewish women go to Jewish school and have a Jewish education. Back then, when they lived in Europe, they didn't have that. It was only the men went to yeshiva. The women didn't have that. The women were always at home. But she started the idea, even though everyone was against her. Why? Because she told myself, and this Mishnah, even though it says in a place where there's no man, you don't have to strive to be a man, it doesn't mean that. It means ish means person. Ish means person. So whether you're a man, whether you're women, it doesn't matter who you are. There's going to be scenarios, there's going to be situations. Maybe it's a book that needs to be written. Maybe it's a video that needs to be made. Maybe it's a person that needs to be talked to. Maybe you see somebody's down one day and he looks like nothing's going his way and he's very sad and depressed. Maybe you could be that person to cheer him up and talk to him. Whatever it is, or it's a cure situation, like I said. The takeaway is what? B'makom she'ein ish. B'makom she'ein anashim. When there's no person, hishtadel liot ish. In a place where there's no one to do the job, strive and be the person to do the job. Thank you for listening.